Then we will start with the first question for the What Not to Do podcast. So, your journey from being an actress and a model to founding a communications agency is truly fascinating. What is the biggest challenge you faced when making that transition? And what do you wish you had known at the very start?
What I wish I had known was what all was required. And
Mm-hmm.
while I say I wish I had planned, I'm glad I didn't because I think if I would have looked at what was ahead of me and attempted to plan it, I probably would not have done it. I literally I met with my then managers for my acting career one day, and I'd just been fooling around with some writing. And they said, uh, we have a client that we think is going to be the next major motion picture star, and we want you to handle his PR.
Hmm.
And I'd never thought about starting a PR firm. And I said, let me think about it. And they said, sure, just give us an answer before you leave today.
Hmm.
So I decided, why not? And it's that why not attitude that has been a mainstay in my life and gotten me into a number of experiences.
Oh, wow. Um, I think the why not exactly the very reason I think you fit into our the first guest list of the why not to do series. Your entire journey started with that question of why not, and it's truly inspiring that like people, especially leaders, are always on are always like we want to try and they want to explore, they want to do something else, they want to innovate, and that's exactly where the why not comes into play. So moving on, so every entrepreneur faces some or the other setbacks, especially in the early days of their careers. That's the 0 to 1 stage is somewhere where people like the leaders are very at a very crucial position. Can you share a specific failure or a major obstacle you encountered while starting the Blaine Group? And what did you learn? And what advice would you give to others if to avoid like a similar situation?
But cash flow is
Mm,
never even. And
right.
I have a supposed friend who says, oh, any business just keeps going up year after year. Well, obviously, he's never owned a business, does not
Absolutely.
what he's talking about. There are times when you think you have too many clients, although I never say too many, I just schedule how it's going to work and work longer hours. Uh,
Right.
there can certainly be a lack of clients, and there
Mm-hmm.
can be a lack of support, whether it be administrative, others on your team. There have been times, several times, when I suddenly was without a bookkeeper. And that's my weak suit. Oh my gosh, what do I do?
Right.
And so those are part of the challenges. I think one of our clients who's starting a new venture
Mm-hmm.
asked a question several weeks ago that I think is very applicable. This person said, well, we've got you, we've got this company, we've got this team, we've got this, we've got this. How could we possibly fail?
Mm.
And I made a long list of everything that could go wrong. You're
Mm.
relying on one manufacturer. What if there's a supply chain issue or the manufacturer is shut down because of FDA issues or suddenly decides to retire?
Mm.
And I could go on and on and on with all of the what if the sales team can't sell into retail? What if they
Mm.
do? and the product sits on the shelf that it doesn't sell through to the consumer.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
there was another entrepreneurial client who had an investor that loved to put money into creating more inventory.
Mm,
And this company was fortunate enough to sell into two major chains, Walgreens and Walmart, but the investor wouldn't put money in marketing.
mm,
So, about 3 months later, everything that was in store went right back to that warehouse. It
mm.
didn't sell through.
Right. Right.
So,
I
those
think that, mhm. Yes.
are just a few examples.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Blaine Group specializes in crisis management, like the way you have been dealing with multiple clients since so many years. What's the most unexpected crisis you have handled for a client?
Oh,
And And looking back, was there anything you would have approached differently? And what's one thing companies should never do during a crisis?
well, the one thing one should never do in a crisis is say no comment. And a lot of attorneys advise that. That's never the best way to go. Uh, that can be modified by saying, we're aware of the situation and we're looking into it.
Mm-hmm.
Plays way better than no comment. The
Right.
most unusual and the biggest crisis we handled
Mm-hmm.
uh, was a number of years ago when every major pet food company was recalling their dog food because dogs were dying. And the FDA traced those Fortune 100 companies' ingredients back to someone who became our client. They were not our client. Their marketing firm referred them to us, and we
Mm-hmm.
were hired on the spot. The entrepreneur went to China to investigate his vendor. There was a worldwide shortage of wheat gluten at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, for the first time in the history of his company, he purchased product from a company that he had not met with in person.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out that this new vendor was housed on a melamine refuse dumping site. And melamine, when tested, appears to be a wheat gluten.
Mm-hmm.
Melamine was what was killing the dogs.
Oh my God. Oh my
So,
God.
so he called me from China on Saturday and said, uh, "Should I come home?" And I said, "Do you have appointments in China?" And he said, "No, but I could schedule some." And I said, "No, in a crisis, business as usual. If you don't have to cancel anything, I'd rather have you here." While he was flying home, the FDA called his home. His wife answered it. She was in charge of quality control for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got back on Sunday, he conference called with the FDA. They wanted a press release out Monday morning, and they have a special process that it has to go through. They approve it, goes to AP, etc. As soon as that press release hit their website, my office phone was ringing off the hook with calls from concerned pet owners. And I let my team deal with that. And I dealt with media because we're so accustomed to pushing to get coverage for our non-crisis clients, and non-crisis is the bulk of our business. Uh,
Right.
that my staff has trouble saying no to someone who's calling to say, well, we want to interview your client. And if we can't interview him, we're not going to cover this story. And I would take that call and say, oh, I'm so sorry. What? But I was cheering because that's exactly what we wanted.
Right. Absolutely.
So, long story short, press was very fair to him, other than his hometown press, who seems, Las Vegas press seems to love to hate their local businesses. There are
Hmm.
several that very, very strange. And I don't know what ultimately happened to him because his wife decided he was spending too much money on us.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
And the last thing I read an article in the LA Times saying that he had the opportunity to testify before a federal grand jury.
Okay.
He was the only American who was going to be interviewed, which meant if they needed a fall guy, he was facing either 34 or 37 years.
Hmm.
And I don't know what happened.
Oh my God. It's truly a very pressurizing situation, especially being into the just not being into PR, but also handling a lot of crisis at the same time. Even growing a company from scratch to a full service communications agency is no small feat. What are some critical mistakes you made in the growth phase? Now we're moving forward from your initial phase to the growth phase, and how did those experiences shape your leadership style of today?
One of the situations that most shaped how I deal with things, I don't let anything go out of my office unless I've reviewed it. And that may seem like total micromanagement, but going back, gosh, it's probably been 30, 40 years ago. I had someone who was a director of uh, government relations, and we were doing some lobbying. And after we had successfully completed a project for a client, she sent a letter out to the local city council, encouraged, encouraging them to support a particular candidate's fundraiser. And because it was poorly worded and I had not reviewed it, that letter ricocheted around City Hall to the news media.
Oh my God. Hmm.
And, and she got a phone call asking her to be interviewed at one of the local TV stations.
Hmm.
And it was one of the networks, local network. And I said, I don't think you should do that. But if you insist on it, let me tell you what I would tell a client.
Yes,
Remember that anything you say can and will be used as a soundbite. So do
definitely.
not give them anything that makes for a good soundbite. The other way I encourage anyone in that situation is to, if you want to be quoted, be really out there. If you
Hmm.
want to be quoted, be boring. He went and did an hour taped interview at the station.
Right.
We were the lead story on
Hmm.
the 4 p.m. evening news with
Mhm.
a headline superimposed over my letterhead, the letter that had been sent from City Hall,
Oh my God.
a line of bribery scandal at City Hall. And right under that, the Blaine Group.
Oh God.
So, headlines in the Metro section of the next day's newspaper, uh,
Mhm.
and a weekend with attorneys. It
Oh
was
my.
way too. Uh, Fortunately, I had errors and omissions insurance then. No one
Mhm.
will cover that now. And
Mhm.
that city council member got a five-figure settlement from my insurance company
Mhm.
and a taped apology for me because this council member was planning to run for mayor.
Okay. Interesting. So,
So that's
yeah.
why I look at everything. And that's why the person who was heading that department was also a good friend of mine. This,
Okay. Mhm.
oh, how she dealt with it ended that friendship. So I'm
Mhm.
so not keen on working with friends.
Hmm. I like how we're getting so many case studies through this conversation. So, moving on, the Blaine Group has executed numerous award-winning strategies. Were there any campaigns that didn't go as planned, or what did those experiences teach you about the importance of adaptability? Maybe listening to clients, or maybe clients listening to you. The either way out.
I work hard at listening to clients and picking up what's important and the buzzwords
Mm-hmm.
and extrapolating that into a way that will play for the press. And I'm an absolute news junkie. I spend probably 2 or more hours a day with various news feeds, newsletters that come into my email. And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm at home, the news is always on in the background. And at
Mm-hmm.
least I can listen to it. I don't need to see it most of the time. Uh, and I may pick something up that's good in a pitch. Once I heard a client's name saying he was going to be on a show that night that it was supposed to be a week later. So that necessitated some some
Mm-hmm.
square around.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel uh betrayed by the client anytime such things happen, that maybe there's a plan of action which you have already strategized and you have laid it out to the client, but then you see things happening differently, and you see things, maybe there are the strategies are same as you have recommended, but then the line of action is completely different.
A lot of things change along the way to implementation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my mentors, long time ago, mentor, dear friend, uh, came out of advertising, was uh, won a lot of creative awards, was president of an ad agency, and wrote multiple books.
Mm-hmm.
He once said that the way to get a client to approve your concept is to have a typographical error in the copy because they'll focus on the mistake rather than the concept. And I don't always do that, but sometimes it accidentally happens.
That's a really interesting thing. just off focus the content, off focus the main focus. That's a very interesting strategy. Even you have been a strong advocate for women entrepreneurs, co-chairing the California delegation to the White House Conference on Small Businesses and serving as past president of the NAWBO. So, what challenges have you faced in these roles, and what's the biggest what not to do lesson you have learned in advocation for others, especially women, or maybe yes.
Well, I certainly had a challenge in that role.
Mm-hmm.
At the meetings leading up to the White House Conference on Small Business,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of discussion in breakout groups about uh, government organizations set asides for small
Mm-hmm.
businesses, for minority owned businesses, for women owned businesses. And there were a number of women who did not agree with my viewpoint that it was better to have a piece of a larger pie, and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to find the size of that slice. And I was accused of being non supportive of women for that point of view. We were part of that slice
Mm-hmm.
and made the best bidder win.
Right. Absolutely. So, lastly, we just have 5 minutes to the meeting. So, we are jumping on to the last question.
Okay.
Uh, if you could distill all your experiences into one critical piece of advice on what not to do for aspiring leaders as well as for seasoned leaders, you coming with such an extensive experience, I want better advices for seasoned leaders. What would that be?
Let me see how many things I can get in quickly. Uh,
Yes.
Having worked with a lot of entrepreneurs in the last few decades,
Mhm.
uh, the biggest reason that I've seen them fail is that they got greedy.
Hmm.
So I would say don't be greedy, uh, and don't abdicate. When you
Mhm.
delegate, you have to follow up.
Right.
Uh, and from a lot of people I met through the White House conference, don't borrow from payroll taxes. The IRS will find you.
Hmm.
Uh, and don't take all the credit for yourself. Share it with your team. In fact, if you can, blame it all on them. Let them feel good.
Right.
Um, and a lot of people are slow to respond to phone calls, to emails. I urge fast reactions. I just
Absolutely.
think that's how business should be done.
Right. Right.
And the bottom line is don't believe your own PR.
Yes. So, and even I think all of these pointers very closely resonate with you. I've been working with you. I actually know the response time that you have. You are very quick in responding to anyone and everyone. You take up things as early as possible. You review, push things like the flow of work that and the circulation that happens from your end. I definitely this is a very first hand experience that I have with working with you since I don't know now almost a year maybe. Is that you are truly very quick, and that's the reason you also roll out things very well. So those advices that you gave, I think that really resonate with you as a person. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.